So welcome everybody. My name is Anna Ibrahimi. I'm a health program specialist in the Office of Programs to Enhance Neuroscience Workforce Diversity. Welcome to the NINDS and NIMH Applicant Assistance Webinar for the NIH Neuroscience Development for Advancing the Careers of a Diverse Research Workforce, R25. Before we get started, I just have a few logistics to share with you. So captions are available. You can go to live transcript and show captions or view the full transcript if you need them. This is a webinar, so you're all muted. We don't have a raise hand function, but please do type your questions into the Q&A box. You can post anonymously. You can upvote other people's questions, so please do so. At any time throughout the webinar, questions will be addressed at the very end. We'll have plenty of time for Q&A, which I will moderate with our wonderful panelists here today. So again, type any questions in the chat, in the Q&A box. If you have any other comments, feel free to use the chat. Also a note that the recording and all the resources that we share, including the slides, will be made available to you. We'll email them out. We'll have them on our social media, on our webpage. So no need to worry about frivolously taking notes. We will have all the resources and recording available for you soon. With that, I will just introduce our speakers for the presentation. We have Dr. James or Jay Churchill from NIMH, Dr. Michelle Jones-London from the Open Office at NINDS, and Dr. Lauren Ulrich, a program director also with Open at NINDS. And the outline of the webinar today, we'll start with the program vision and purpose, go into the program eligibility, clarify application policies and components, go over some key components and avoiding frequent mistakes, and again, plenty of time for Q&A. So with that, I will pass it to Dr. Michelle Jones-London to get us started.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Ibrahimi. So let's start with a little bit of the vision setting for this NOFO. And I know many of you are still getting used to the name. We used to call them FOAs. We now call them NOFOs. So just really quickly, I want to talk about the rationale and the purpose. The purpose of this NOFO is to increase the pool of current and future PhD level research scientists from diverse backgrounds, or those such as people underrepresented in biomedical neuroscience research. It is also to really facilitate those career transitions and the career advancement of these participants going from the next step of their neuroscience careers. We'll talk a little bit more about career stage eligibility for the NOFO, but this is a program that could have a mixture of career stages if that's a strength of your program design. The other part of this is really, we know that by having inclusion, equity, and diverse talent all across these career pathways, that what we gain for our institutes is really scientific and enrichment and innovation in the research. For the program vision, as you're thinking about whether this NOFO is something that is a fit for what you're thinking about in terms of design, the program should really focus on factors that have shown to affect retention. And the career stages that we're focusing on are post-bac, graduate students, postdoctoral trainees, and junior faculty. For those who are interested in undergraduate, we have other NOFOs. In terms of the components of the vision and things that you should focus on, these are factors such as mentoring, really trying to increase scientific networks, really thinking about professional development activities and designs and interventions, and then finally, attention to structural and institutional environment regarding inclusion. A lot of these components are talked about in a recent publication, The Science of Effective Mentorship in STEM, and could be a good resource as you're building your program design. Next, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Churchill, to talk about program eligibility.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. So I guess for the next couple of slides, I'm going to tell you just a little bit about sort of who we're looking at here. That is like who's eligible for it, what types of institutions, and then how do you figure out which of the NIH institutions that are a part of this funding opportunity might your area of your proposal actually go to. So regarding institutional eligibility, as is the case in general for the R25 mechanism, institutional eligibility is limited to domestic entities. While academic institutions are often considered primary targets, scientific societies and small businesses are also eligible to apply. Importantly, and this is a little bit different from a lot of the other funding mechanisms, particularly the other R25s, only one application, we can only accept one application from any given institution. And that means ultimately only one award can go to any single institution. And your sponsored research office is going to help you understand whether there's already an application there. I'll provide you with some guidance later as to how to figure out if your institution happens to already have one. So definitely, if there's a question about that, talk to your sponsored research or reach out to us as well. Next slide, please. Regarding principal investigator eligibility, generally, principal investigators must essentially have a terminal degree and expertise to lead the program that is proposed. PIs have to have a full-time appointment at the submitting institution. They can't be affiliated with a different institution, have zero sort of direct connection to the submitting institution, and they have to have appropriate professional responsibilities, such as teaching or research, or whatever the case may be there as well. We absolutely encourage early stage investigators to be named principal investigators, but we would want to be a little cautious with this in that we don't want the activities of the R25 program to take away from their own independent career development path as well. But definitely ESIs bring a different level to these programs as well when appropriate. If the applicant organization is a scientific society, then it's required that the advisory board of that society needs to name a suitable principal investigator for this application. And regarding effort, the PI has to have an appropriate amount of effort. They can't have, a nominal amount of effort and they're just as a named individual for name recognition. But that person does not have to have independent research funding from the administrating institute or center. And so, for example, right now you've got a couple of people on here from neurology or from mental health. And if you are submitting an application, you don't have to have funding from one of our institutes or even any of the 4 named institutes in this particular funding announcement to be eligible as a principal investigator. Next slide, please. Regarding the participants, I know Michelle has already touched on this a little bit, but I think it's worth coming back again because we get a lot of questions in this space. As is the case in general for the R25 funding mechanism, participants supported by the R25 should be U.S. citizens or permanent residents. This funding announcement is limited, as Michelle has already touched on, to the career stages of postbacs, graduate students, postdocs, and early faculty levels, not undergraduates. That's different with this version. Efforts, you can tailor your program on efforts focused at any one of these career stages, or you can choose to span multiple career stages. It's not a requirement to have multiple career stages, but whatever makes most sense for your program. And last, as Michelle mentioned as well, this program is focused on enhancing the diversity of the U.S. biomedical workforce, specifically in the area of neuroscience. Next slide, please. So to participate in this funding announcement, how do you figure out where your science actually goes to? Well, the first thing I would say is that there's 4 institutes and centers named here that actually are signed on to this particular funding announcement. And the best way to do it is you've got the names right here in front of you in this table. If you look at the bottom of the funding announcement, you also see scientific contacts from each of the appropriate institutions. And what I would say is reach out to us. We are here to help. Send us your proposed specific aims and we can provide guidance as to whether it fits the particular mission of our institute or where it might fit, or if it doesn't. I think it's useful information to have that. I would remind you as well that this is only one of the many, many, many different R25 announcements that are supported at the NIH. Michelle touched on this earlier. For example, this particular funding announcement doesn't support efforts at the undergraduate level, but there are other funding mechanisms that do support efforts at that career stage. Next slide, please. So Today, you've got two of the institutes or centers, NIMH and NINDS on this particular call. But as we showed in the previous slide, there are 4 different institutes and centers, which include the Alcohol Institute and the Drug Abuse Institute as well. For any applications that are deemed appropriate or scientifically fitting NIMH or NINDS, they'll be reviewed together by a single panel that'll be convened by NINDS. Applications that are more focused in the space of NIDA or NIAAA will be reviewed in those respective institutions. Lastly, we strongly recommend that you reach out to program staff prior to submitting an application to talk about things like scientific fit for our priorities. Next slide, please. So how do you know then? How do you know where your research best fits? Well, one thing I gave you one tip a moment ago, and that is to reach out to program staff. We can provide you with guidance, but there's a lot that you can do on your own as well. And one of the great tools that's available to you, that's publicly available, is the NIH Reporter. There's a link for it here. And essentially, this is the matchmaker. It'll help you understand what other programs are already out there through this funding announcement, so you don't propose something that might be redundant. You can also figure out whether your institution might already have one of these. You might see if there are additional efforts in your geographic area or in a particular career stage that are focused on things similar or complementary to what you're doing. It's a really great research tool to use, not just for the R25, but for all of the research supported by the NIH. With that, I would like to turn it over to Lauren, who's going to take you through some additional questions.
Thank you, Jay. I am going to focus on the actual application, the policies, and the different components of the application. So this NOFO, as we discussed, will support creative activities with a focus on 3 activity types: mentoring activities, research experiences, and courses for skill development. And all 3 activities must be included in any given application. This program may complement ongoing programs, but it must be distinct from anything that is already receiving federal support. And like all R25s, it is not intended to support long-term training, so no full-time 12-month appointments, because those are only supported by NRSA mechanisms. For mentoring activities, you might think about things within a mentoring network of developing professional career skills, facilitating scholarly writing and grantsmanship, promoting successful transitions from one career stage to another, providing leadership development, identifying collaborators, things of that nature. And we also welcome programs that are focused on improving the caliber of mentorship. In terms of research experiences, these should be hands-on, authentic research experiences, but of course appropriate to the needs and the career level of participants. So for postbac and graduate students, these might be research experiences and training that are not already available through formal NIH training mechanisms. And for postdocs and junior faculty, this might be more about extending their skills or giving them very specific experiences or knowledge. And it should, complementary activities should also be included to support the participant's scientific development generally, such as scientific writing and presentation skills, and of course, rigor and reproducibility. For courses in skill development, these activities should fill a defined gap in existing resources and provide a course that is significant and impactful for the neuroscience community. And these might include enhancing research skills through an advanced course in neuroscience, or like career development seminars and workshops like grant writing, manuscript preparation, laboratory management, things of that nature. The participants must be very clearly defined within the application. So we already said that you can have post-baccalaureates, graduate students, postdocs, and/or junior faculty. and you should identify the career level or levels for which the proposed program is planned. And we particularly encourage programs that target periods of transition, so maybe later stage graduate students or postdocs about to go on the faculty job market, or that include more than one career stage, so maybe postdocs and junior faculty, for example. You should describe how you will choose the participants and what kind of criteria are involved, including who will be on the selection committee and what their experience is in evaluating these applications. They must also include a description of the potential applicant pool. What number of people do you anticipate reaching based on the selection criteria that you've established? The program faculty or mentors should have research experience and expertise relevant to the proposed program, and should demonstrate a history of or the potential for their intended roles as mentors. And this might include, if you have a post-baccalaureate program, for example, what are the mentors, not general mentoring history, but the mentoring history specific to the post-baccalaureate population. That is good information to include. Mentors must be committed to continue their involvement throughout the total period of the mentee's participation. And of course, we always encourage researchers from diverse backgrounds, including racial and ethnic minorities, persons with disabilities, and women to participate as program faculty. And we also, in the FOA, say that participating faculty in their bio sketches should provide a personal statement that describes this prior mentoring and experience as relevant to the specific proposed program. An advisory committee is not required, but it is recommended. If it is included, the composition, roles, responsibilities, desired expertise, frequency of committee meetings, basically all that useful information should be included in the application. And there should be some information about how the advisory committee will evaluate the effectiveness of the program. Any renewal applications should include the names of all the committee members that participated in the past project period. For the budget, it is $250K a year for 5 years, up to 5 years, and up to $75,000 a year can go to personnel costs for administering the program, specifically individuals who are designing, directing, and implementing this program may request salary and fringe. NIH will not provide salary and fringe for things like people who are just part of the institution. And I'll get to that more on the next slide. For salary for participants, we will provide salary and fringe benefits consistent with institutional salary policies. But again, it cannot be full-time 40 hours a week for 12 months, because that's only NRSAs. Other allowable costs include housing, registration fees or tuition, some research supplies up to $2,000 a year, and consultant costs, equipment, supplies, travel, and other program-related expenses if justified based on the program design. So in terms of unallowable costs, the mentors or costs associated with mentoring the participants are not allowable if mentoring is considered a regular part of that individual's academic duties. You also cannot provide salary and support for central institutional administrative personnel, like budget officers or institutional public relations. You can't pay for the cost of travel between the place of residence and the training institution, except in cases of disability or extreme hardship. And again, no full-time support. The institutional environment is another big piece of the application. And you must have a letter of institutional commitment that includes a description of the specific support, be it financial or otherwise, to be provided for the program. These might include things like staff, facilities, and educational resources, and these must be demonstrated to be adequate to ensure that the program is successful. And institutions also need to clearly state the alignment of the goals of the program in enhancing scientific workforce diversity to the institutional mission, and show accountability for promoting a climate of inclusion for all participants within this program. You should also show how you take advantage of the existing educational environment. So what are the strengths of your institution and how are those leveraged within this program design? You should also show collaboration and buy-in from all programs, departments, and institutions involved. If there are collaborative arrangements between more than one institution, those should be clearly described and included in the letters of support. My slides are delaying when they're advancing. For an evaluation plan, that is also must be included, and applicants should develop educational programs and activities that can be amenable to formal program evaluation. You need to specify the baseline metrics such as the numbers, the educational levels, demographic characteristics, and measures of long or short-term success. And if awarded, you will be required to submit data tables 8A and 8C as applicable with every research performance progress report. So it makes sense to include those metrics as your baselines in the application. You can include additional ones, but you will be required to collect those data at a minimum. And applicants are always encouraged to obtain direct feedback from the participants as to what is or is not working. You also need to include a dissemination plan that how you will disseminate these findings nationally. And this could include things like sharing course curricula and related materials on a website, by presentations at scientific meetings, putting on workshops. And we also highly encourage publication of programs, findings, and outcomes so that other people can learn from your program successes and replicate these best practices. For renewals, there are specific review criteria. And the reviewers will consider the progress made in the last funding period, and specifically how well is the program achieving its stated goals. Has the program had a strong impact on student success, provided that added value? Has it been integrated into the fabric of the participating institution? And also, is there any evidence that these programs are being institutionalized? Make sure you include the answer to all of these questions in any renewal application. If you anticipate applying, we highly appreciate a letter of intent, and you can send that to the NINDS Diversity Training mailbox, or if you know which IC you will be applying to, which NIH institute or center, then you can also send it directly to that institute or center. And you should include the title, the names of the anticipated PDPIs, any other key personnel, participating institutions, and then of course, the information about this NOFO. And what this does is it helps us plan our review, so we get a sense of how many applications are coming in, where they're coming from, and what's the general topic. Definitely pay attention to the allowable appendix materials. We have seen too many examples where people include unallowable information in the appendix, and then CSR, receipt and referral, they kick the application out, and there's nothing that we can do on the IC side to change that. So there are slightly different instructions and very specific allowable appendix materials. So if you're not sure if something is allowable or not, please reach out and we're happy to work with you to figure it out. Similarly, please submit early. There's only one receipt date per year in September, and we cannot, work any kind of magic to allow late applications. It does not matter what the excuse is. So submit early, give yourself that time to work through any potential errors or things that might go wrong in the application process. And just note that when you're applying in September, funding will likely start the next July. So when you're putting together your timelines and figuring out how the program will start with that date in mind. And now I will turn it over to Dr. Jones-London to close us out.
Yes, thank you so much, Lauren. And I know this is a lot of information coming at you. As we said, these slides and the webinar will be posted and provided. So with this next section, we really wanted to give you some more just take-home language in terms of avoiding frequent mistakes. We've had this NOFO in various forms for a while now, and we've, over the history of this program, seen a lot of things. So we want, the hindsight of, or the mistakes of others can be your hindsight in terms of not repeating them. The major thing is you've heard about the description of the R25, and hopefully you've been given a sense that there really is not one size fits all. You want to think about addressing a key audience and an important aspect and a need in the research education. R25s are value added to an institution, to an environment, to a program. You also should have very clear program goals and milestones and a plan that will achieve those goals. This isn't $1 million grant. This is $250K a year. So you can't, as we say, boil the ocean. You really want to be very clear about what is the strategy, what is the design, and how does that match with the budget. And in another vein, you also want to take a really holistic approach, and that is really taking advantage of your institutional strengths and community attributes. A question that we often get is, can you give me an example of an R25? Can I see how someone else that was successful did this? And the truth is that really won't help you, because each department, once again, each institutional environment, it's going to be really unique. So you want to really make sure that as you're crafting your proposal, you're taking advantage of those trends and really talking about that. The other thing that people get worried about is, well, if we have other programs here, I don't want to really talk about them because NIH will think that this is redundant. The truth is, no, we don't want to fund something that is already being funded, but we actually do love synergy. If you have existing programs in the DEI space or in the training space, that there are components that will add synergy to this investment, it's a great idea to talk about that and showcase that synergistic and holistic approach. The other thing that we see with R25s is innovation is a bonus, but effectiveness is most important. Sometimes it's really hard to make really quality, great mentorship something that no one has ever seen before, right? So where it may lack in innovation, you may be able to really explain how effective you can be in terms of reaching the goal. Some key review questions, realize that for every NOFO that the NIH publishes, how you will be judged is no secret. It's right there in the FOA when it comes to the reviewer questions. And so all of them are important, but I'm going to pull out 3 that I really think capture, something that you really need to put on repeat as you're writing the application is if the aims of the education program are achieved, will they lead to the development of a diverse group of highly trained scientists in increased numbers and in neuroscience research areas? The other one is the plan for evaluation sound and likely to provide information on the effectiveness of the program? We really want strategies and interventions, but equally important is how will you evaluate? How will you know if what you did made a difference? If the proposed program will recruit participants, is the plan recruitment, retention, and follow-up activities adequate to ensure a highly qualified participant pool? That is something that reviewers will always be looking for. You maybe have a great idea, but does your availability for the people that can participate, does it justify a program? Finally, do the institutions or organizations have experience providing educational opportunities to student or faculty from diverse backgrounds? And if so, are the outcomes described for previous or currently supported programs there? And how will the proposed program fit with the existing environment? Once again, take into account that this program isn't going to exist on an island. It'll be integrated and should be synergistic within the existing environment. And what is the stated commitment for assuring a climate of inclusion for the R25 participants? It's great to have a program that brings in diversity and brings in trainees into an environment, but if that environment is so hostile that it ends up turning off people from pursuing careers in research or science, then that's working against the program goals. Another sort of things to focus and think about for key components to a successful application is really, this comes back to the beginning of the presentation. It has to fit one of the participating ICs. So really reach out to us, even share a draft. The list on the slide that we showed, it's not all 27 ICs and centers. There are a few. And if the fact is, if it doesn't align with our mission or our research areas, we won't be able to pay it. Our council will wonder, why in the heck are we paying this? And the thought is that also, if you get in touch with us in advance, we can maybe help you find an IC that is a fit. Just because they're not participating in this particular NOFO doesn't mean that they don't also have our 25 programs, as Dr. Churchill described. The other thing that's really important to us is that we want to focus on sound research concepts and educational principles that focus on the asset models and leadership opportunities rather than solely a deficit model and remediation focus. And this really comes from the fact that we're not just, fixing a bunch of broken people when it comes to diversity. It really is understanding that it's about structures, it's about environment, it's about opportunities. So we're really looking for strategies and programs that focus on this asset model. Another thing is to make sure that you're addressing a critical barrier in the progress. Is what you're doing actually matter? Can you show that this strategy or intervention or your specific aims aligns to what we're seeing in terms of the training universe or for faculty? You have to go beyond what is standard practice for an institution. Journal clubs are great, but that shouldn't be the focus of an R25 funded through this NOFO. I've already touched on this, asking yourselves, is this a program? Will you have a cohort and a critical mass of participants? You need that to justify the program, but you also need those numbers to help with the evaluation of the intervention. And then finally, show reviewers some feasibility for the intervention or strategy you're proposing. And it doesn't have to be this massive thing. Even if you've had a pilot at your university, or you've done a similar program, but maybe in a different scientific discipline, reviewers are going to want to know that it makes sense that that this investment would occur with you, with the faculty that you have on board, and with the strategy that you're proposing. Also, we're talking about, as I said, increasing the number and success of diverse trainees. And you don't need to include multiple career stages. This is something that sometimes people get confused in the NOFO when they see this whole list and we talk about career transitions, is that if it doesn't make sense for your environment or your program to include multiple career stages, don't do it. It is only a bonus if it actually makes sense for the program you're designing. The other thing is to provide evidence that the participating faculty have the experience in mentoring the career stages and mentoring the students or early career researchers that they're talking about. Lauren mentioned this in her section. This is something that people get dinged about, proposing a program, but in the bio sketches of the participating faculty, there's no evidence that they've ever really worked with that career stage. It's important that people have that experience, and well-known names are not enough in terms of what the reviewers will be looking for. Benchmarks should be specified, and specific plans and procedures should be described to capture, analyze, and report outcome measurements that will really determine the success of the program. And so with that, I'll ask the other panelists to turn on their questions, and we are more than happy to take the questions. And I know we already have a few in the chat. So Dr. Ibrahimi, if you want to moderate.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jones-London. By the way, you'll see this in the chat, but you have a little bit of an echo in your audio. So if you could maybe look into that while we prepare for the Q&A. As mentioned, we have plenty of time, which is great. Thank you all for submitting your questions. We'll have Dr. Jones-London, Dr. Ulrich, and Dr. Churchill, as well as Dr. Bill Benzing, Dr. Steve Britt, and Dr. Deanna Adkins, who are from the NINDS Scientific Review branch, and they are here to answer all your questions as well. All right, with that, I will stop sharing my screen and we'll get started with the Q&A. All right, so just to kind of get us started, I think maybe I'll direct this first to Lauren. You mentioned in one of your answers, but just for the recording as well, can clinical fellows and medical residents be supported with this program? Do graduate students include master's students, professional science master's program? Can they be included? Could you address that first?
Yeah, so for graduate students, the FOA says that it may be a PhD or MD students, and then you may include the more clinical focus in terms of residents and things in like at the postdoctoral and junior faculty level.
Thank you, Dr. Ulrich. All right, Jay, I think we had a question during your section as well. Can you clarify if it is one application per institution for each institute?
Yeah, good question. I would encourage you to think about this as this is a single funding announcement, and you can only have one application from an institution to this funding announcement, irrespective of which of the 4 participating ICs may or may not support the application. So you only have one per institution per funding announcement for this particular funding announcement.
Thank you so much, Dr. Churchill. All right, Dr. Jones-London, I'll pass it to you next. We had quite a few questions on the definition of participating faculty versus program faculty. Are they the same? Does it include all individuals who have any teaching activities in the program, or is it intended to be the core faculty members of the program?
Yeah, is it still echoing?
It is. I'm not sure what the issue is, but we can still understand you. So if it's okay, we can proceed.
I mean, we're specifically taking the NOFO language. The way that they describe it, the program faculty is described in the eligibility card. And those, I don't think it's much of a difference, in terms of, it's all semantics, but the program faculty, a lot of times what it'll be referring to is the people who are actually running the program, right? But then, as we know, for these R25s, there will be participating faculty who will come in and out depending on, like, say, I'm trying to think of, say you're offering a course and that's more participating faculty. They're not doing the heavy lifting of actually running the program. But the way that the language is in the NOFO, they're sort of using it interchangeably. The more important piece to note is that because you're allowed to have participating faculty bio sketches in the appendix, you should include that. Most people only include the bio sketches of the PIs or the faculty in the program who are overseeing it intimately. But the fact is, you are allowed to describe the rest of the faculty. Most people do it in table form to describe, the breadth and the depth of everyone that's going to be involved. So, the question we get is, NIH doesn't want 200 bio sketches. No, we don't. So that's why the appendix is there. And that's why you'll see, I don't know the page limit, but there is a page limit. So you'll have to think about how you can get across to the reviewers that the expertise is there, not only at the top level, but at all of these interactions that your trainees or the faculty will have throughout the entire program. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jones-London. Hopefully, if they want further clarification, feel free to keep posting your questions. We had one attendee ask, again, about kind of, sorry, this is for Dr. Ulrich. Is it permissible for there to be overlap between the advisory committee and core participating faculty?
I would not recommend it. If you have an advisory committee, the whole point is that they are sort of this outside body that is giving you recommendations, and if they're also participating in the program, they have a very different view, and they're seeing the program from a very different lens. So if you want to get information and feedback from your core participating faculty, I think that's a great idea, but the advisory committee should be sort of a separate body, and it could even include people from outside of your institution. It could include people who are like very knowledgeable about the career stage or the type of participants you're trying to recruit. It doesn't just have to be people within your department and your institution kind of thing, but they should be separate.
Thank you. And I'll pass this to anyone, but maybe the scientific review officers can comment on this especially, but there was an applicant that had a few questions about the participants' costs section. One had a question about participants may be compensated for participation in activities specifically required by the proposed research education program if sufficiently justified. What type of expenses can be covered under compensation? Could it include travel and other participation costs in the program?
I will be honest. Questions, it's better to. Oh, I'm sorry, Deanna.
No, I was going to say that program should answer this. We try to stay out of the specifics of the budget.
Yeah, I was about to say it's easier if we discuss your program, right? Because it's not an easy answer. We really need to understand, how it relates to the program itself, the cost that you're requesting. And that's why we talk about justification. So whoever asked that question, just reach out to us and we can talk about your specific, situation.
Wonderful. Thanks for clarifying. And again, we'll provide all the contact information for everyone on the panel in a post-event email. We have a big question here for applicant recruitment. Do you have any advice on how to accommodate the SCOTUS decision on affirmative action?
I can take that one. So Michelle also answered in the Q&A box, and we at NIH are still waiting for official guidance from HHS, but we are continuing with business as usual at the moment. But for all of these R25s, no matter what NOFO it is, applicants and recipients should be consulting with their general counsel about what the institution's interpretation of any applicable laws and regulations is, because NINDS and NIMH, we're not the ones choosing the participants in these programs and these institutional awards. It is the institution, your university or institution, that is actually choosing the participants. So you need to work with your general counsel to ensure that you're following the laws and this new decision.
Thank you, Dr. Ulrich. I think that kind of also touches on another question that we had about the selection of underrepresented minority participants and how to make the process unbiased. I'll open it if anyone else wants to comment on that.
And I would say there's lots of literature, lots of conversation, lots of things published by the National Academy of Science in terms of, you know, trying to take bias out of selection and review, you know, educating yourself on that and working within your institution, maybe your own diversity office. But certainly most universities and institutions are doing this in other areas, even with regards to recruitment and hiring. And so taking advantage of what that means in your environment and from where you sit is really important. So I would say work internally.
Thank you, Dr. Johns-Linden. All right, we have one other question about kind of not implying a deficit model. So how do you recommend articulating the rationale behind a skill development course for underrepresented participants without implying a deficit model? I think maybe continuing from Dr. Jones-Linden's comment about the literature, but if anyone wants to comment.
I think we know that, like most graduate students, need to develop in these areas. So it's not specifically about underrepresented students that need these skills, but just graduate students in general need these skills. And remember that this will be in the context of an entire program that will include mentoring, and it will include research experiences, and so it's more about how do all of these activities fit together and support development of these participants as whole graduate students, and also identifying what are the strengths of the exact population that you are recruiting, right? Because you're not recruiting all underrepresented students in the United States, you are recruiting specific population at a specific career stage in a specific, you know, place in the United States even sometimes. So thinking through not generally what do underrepresented students need, but the people that you will be serving in your program, what do they need? And I think it's a lot easier to make the case then than when talking more generally.
And can I just add, you still have to demonstrate the need and that there's a gap with your particular audience and at your institution that this program is filling. So it's not that you cannot speak about what's missing, just that generality of saying this population is in deficit versus in this situation right here, we are providing a bridge over that gap that we're identifying.
Yeah, I guess I might add something to that as well. I agree with everything that's been said. I think it's important to consider as well that that there's not going to be a one size fits all for how to specifically address that. So that kind of the burden falls on the applicant to come up with the strategy or the best rationale as to how to make that case. So I think that's one thing. And I think the second part of this as well, and what you might be picking up from us on our side of the equation here is we're a little bit hesitant to give you an exact answer because we might have our own personal beliefs, but at the end of the day, it's going to be peer review that's going to make an evaluation of that. And what we don't want to do is steer you and tell you to do X, and peer review says, well, I don't think that's right. It should have been Y, because that's not, that crosses a boundary for us. So really the burden comes back to the applicant to make that compelling case there.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much. And also, we have a lot of questions coming in the chat. A big take home is to please read the notice of funding opportunity very carefully. This grant can be renewed only for US citizens, permanent residents as participants. Some other questions like the due dates can all be found in the NOFO. I guess maybe I'll go to a frequently asked question, following up from something Dr. Ulrich mentioned about, can the program span multiple career stages? We found the answer is yes, but is there a maximum number of career stages that can be supported?
We always get that Goldilocks question. As we said, your budget is $250K. Can you span? We throw the question back to you, right? In terms of in doing a stellar job with a program, you may find that it would be hard to get both that critical mass by career stage and effective programming if you span the whole thing. But I don't know, like maybe you could prove me wrong and do that. It's certainly allowable. I would just say we usually don't see that. People tend to focus on, 1, 2, and I think we have one program who's doing sort of the 3, but that's usually rare.
Yeah, I might add that it really comes down to what makes the most sense for your program. How can you convince review that you have the resources and infrastructure to support what it is you say you're going to do across those multiple levels? Because it's not like taking the exact same formula and applying it to multiple levels. It's not identical. There are different issues that one has to grapple with. So I think it's great to have multiple levels where it makes sense. But I would also, as Michelle said, I wouldn't try to solve all of the world's problems with a single application here as well.
Excellent. Thank you. We have a few more minutes. If you have any other questions, feel free to post them in the chat. Otherwise, maybe I'll ask one more frequently asked question. If my program involves research experiences, can the research of participating faculty be in other neuroscience areas not covered by NINDS?
I can go. Like I was talking, and I have the worst echo. So the way that, and we cannot speak for all of the participating ICs, right? We're talking about just NINDS and NIMH. The way that we work together, we kind of consider all the applications and then we decide, oh, this is more fit for NINDS or this is more fit for NIMH. And we've had some examples where people have had broad neuroscience and maybe a mixture of both NINDS and NIMH. So it's not a clean answer. We really are not, kicking things out because it's not 100% NINDS or it's 100, not 100% NIMH. We need to see either mission areas be the majority. And as I said, where it gets a little bit tricky is it could be both, right? But there has to be some reason why NINDS or NIMH would consider it a home for us in this space. If it's really broad and just very generic, and we can't see, especially the neurorelevance, then it's probably not a fit. The best way to determine that is, once again, reach out to us, send us a draft of your specific aims or your concept. It doesn't have to be fully fleshed out. It's good to start this early, and we will get back to you and have a conversation. We're not going to write your application for you, but we can let you know if we see this being a fit for our goals and our vision.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jones-Linden. We have one more question that just came in through the chat. I believe, Jay, you answered this, but hopefully you can touch on it again. Is only one R25 application submitted per cycle, or only one R25 per institution?
Yeah, so so let me provide an example. We're only going to fund one of these R25 programs at any individual institution per 5 years. So if you have a program that has been there for 3 years, you got a couple of years before any other applications could come in from that institution. It's not that we're only going to consider one from an institution in any given year. If there's a program that's existing, supported specifically by this funding mechanism, there can be other R25 programs. There likely are going to be other R25 programs already at your institution. But if it's supported by this particular funding announcement, which by the way includes the earlier versions of it, active R25 supported by this funding announcement or the previous version of it, then we will not consider that application.
Thank you so much for clarifying. Wonderful. All right, with that, I don't
just 1 second. So Jay, I just wanted to double check that, is because I think in the NOFO it says only one application per institution is allowed, but I don't see information about only one application per institution will be funded, unless I'm missing it in the NOFO somewhere.
Yeah, the intention of that, and Michelle can weigh in as well, the intention of that is that what we don't want to do is have, let's say in it 5 years, we don't want to make 5 awards. This is an extreme exaggeration. 5 awards to the same institution for 5 of the same types of things, let's say at different career stages. We don't want that. We want this to be distributed across the United States and other areas. We do have some programs. We mentioned the NIH report. We already have some programs that we're starting to see some concentration of effort. They're at different institutions, but they're in similar geographic areas. So what we want to do is to try to spread the wealth a little bit, or try to spread where they're having a reach. So if you're in a particular area of the country, you may have access to not just people at your institution, but in the broader, relatively geographic area. We want to make sure we're starting to spread those seeds to other areas as well. So we don't want to be supporting multiple programs at the same institution through this single funding announcement.
Yeah, and I'll chime in. I think this is one of those things where you also want to check with the IC. The framing that Jay is giving you is a very specific NINDS and NIMH way of, in terms of how we're managing and wanting to spread the wealth of this NOFO. But I honestly cannot speak for NIAAA or NIDA in terms of how they view what I think the point is Lauren's raising in terms of the funded programs. Obviously the applications coming in, but for NINDS and NIMH, it really is about, we don't want multiple NOFOs funded through this R25 at the same university. And it's not we don't want, but we have a budget, right? And it's kind of, if we're trying to do this in a national way, if all 3 awards are at X university and we can only fund 5 awards, we haven't really done much in terms of pushing the needle. So I would say, once again, check in about your specific situation. There is also a caveat in terms of, in full transparency, people have made arguments sometimes where the populations are so removed from each other that it doesn't feel like overlap. Like say this is a physician researcher, and then this is more basic, and the universities, some universities are very weird, like there's actually no overlap in terms of faculty. You can have that conversation. More than likely, it'll be what Jay's answer is, but still just have the conversation. Is what I would say. But everything in terms of, for us, these 2 neuroscience institutes, NINDS and NIMH, is that we really want you working internally to figure out what is the program that you should design, and then putting in a competitive application, one application for a university or an institution. We don't want you internally competing in this review. Like, you should be internally and competing at your home institution. And by the time you get to us, there's one application.
Yeah, I might add just two quick things. I think actually Lauren raises a really good point in that oftentimes we write these funding announcements and it's clear in our head exactly what we're talking about. And then we get it out there like, oh, okay, I can see where there's maybe some confusion there. So this is helpful. I think the second thing I would say is that as you've heard us talk about this already, Michelle framed this as this is mental health and neurology giving you an answer, but it might be worth reaching out to other institutes and centers. And this is a really good example of where if you ask a question of one institute, you will get one answer. But that we don't represent the 27 different institutes and centers. And if you ask the 27 different institutes and centers, you might get 28 different answers. So in this case, we're giving you one answer that has relevance for 2 of the institutes. It likely has relevance for the other 2, but let's not leave that unturned. You should definitely reach out to program staff ahead of time and ask these questions.
Yeah. What I always love is let somebody else tell you no.
Well, thank you all so much. I hope this was a great opportunity for you to see the faces and the people behind NINDS and NIMH that will be helping you and can help you. So thank you all for joining this webinar today. A huge thanks to our panelists, and we will be sending a whole bunch of resources and slides and recordings your way very shortly. So see you next time. Bye.